Hello, my friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I'm doing some fairly simple makeovers that I just absolutely love doing. I hope you enjoy watching them. Let's get started. This first one is an item that I thrifted. It's like a giant hang tag. I'm going to go ahead and remove the stickers, get it cleaned up, give it a good sanding, and then I'm going to give it a coat of my flat black spray paint. When that was dry, I gave it a coat of my cast iron fusion paint. It's my favorite black color. It kind of has a chalkboard look to it. So I'm going to get that painted on there, let it dry really well, and then we'll go on to the next step, which is stamping. I'm using IOD's Kindest Regards stamp with a white ink. This particular ink is the Ranger brand. It's permanent, just like the StazOn inks. So what I did was I just stamped up this one little section so I could cover just that top piece there. I'm going to take a baby wipe and get any little smudges or anything that I got on there that I don't want. And then continue the stamping process by picking out the next section that I wanted to do and lay that down. So I'm trying to pick sections that will cover the areas that I want covered. Like right here, I'm going to fill in a little piece there. Just kind of not doing just the whole pattern on the stamp, just picking sections that I want for each part of the board. I'm going to do this all the way down. And you can see that I'm not getting like solid coverage in all the areas, and that's okay. I want it to look kind of distressed anyway. So now I have this large sunflower transfer from Redesign. It's 24 by 35 in two different pieces. I'm going to cut out the smaller of the two large sunflower arrangements that came in that pack. And I taped it into place, and it almost held, but not quite. So I can get that laid down right where I want it. I'm going to smooth that out with my hands and then grab my little transfer tool and get to work. What I noticed with this particular transfer is there's an outline right there I'm trying to show you that you really kind of need to dig down into with that transfer tool. It had a tendency to not want to adhere as well, and it would like pull it up, and then it just kind of looked funny. So I had to go around all those edges really well and make sure that little outline was attached appropriately. All right, we've got that all done. I'm going to burnish that down really well with that same piece of transfer sheet. And then I'm going to take my little finger sander and just kind of lightly go over some of the areas that were a little bit heavy on the ink. Now I'm going to use Iron Orchids Designs, the Wilde Bloeman transfer set, just to add a couple of butterflies and a dragonfly. Now I'm going to seal all those transfers on with the Duraclear Ultra Matte Sealer. I will leave a list of everything I used in today's video down below in the description box. When that was dry, I got out my antique wax. I'm going to brush this on in sections and then take a dry lint-free cloth and wipe that back. This will add a little bit of age without overpowering it. I know it looks really brown when you first put it on there, but because it's been sealed, you can wipe most of that back, and it just leaves enough to give it a nice hint of age. Of course, if you prefer the more cleaner look, because I thought that looked really great as well, you can just skip this step. I'm going to take a piece of torn tea towel that I have coffee stained, and I'm going to loop that on there just like you do on a regular hang tag with your, jute twine or whatever you're using. Tie that off in a knot up at the top, and then trim off the ends. Next up, I'm using two of these little shelf setter or small wall hangings that I picked up on clearance at Hobby Lobby. I've used these before in previous projects. I'm going to sand those down a little bit and then give them both a coat of DIY's Black Velvet. This step ended up being completely unnecessary, but at the time I was thinking, well, I'm not sure how I'm going to proceed, and I didn't want any of that design from underneath peeking through. I'm going to be adding some texture to the front of these. So I'm going to take my Mod Podge. I didn't need to seal the DIY paint because I'm putting this Mod Podge over it to do my texture. Just going to liberally brush that on there. And then I'm going to take some toilet paper and start putting that into place. You have to separate the plies. And I'm just going to start by adding the big pieces and then start tearing to fill in the spots and then go over it with some more Mod Podge. I did water it down because this toilet paper is really fragile. Normally for fragile decoupage, I would use DIY's liquid patina, but this is just for texture and I don't care if I get tearing and wrinkles and stuff, so I just went with a Mod Podge for this. I'm going to get another layer of that on there and then add another layer of the toilet paper, going kind of to the opposite sides that I did before, so everything's evenly filled in. So I'm going to do 3 layers of the toilet paper. Now on this third layer, everything's just torn into pieces for it, so it's really random. For the final layer, I'm adding a paper towel. This is just the cheap Seafold paper towels that I have in my craft room. Gonna let that dry really well and then sand all the excess off around those edges. With that all cleaned up, I want to do one final coat of the Mod Podge, especially making sure I catch all those edges that may have gotten missed with the first coat that I did. Now to make some castings, I'm using the Sunflower Mold by IOD as well as the Dewdrop Pond. I'm going to use the Hummingbird from this one, and I'm going to cast both of these with the Amazing Casting Resin. I laid my castings down onto my boards and traced around them with a pencil just so I would know where they were going to be, because I'm going to add some more texture with some stencils and some modeling paste. And I didn't really want that to go up underneath where I would be gluing my castings down. So now I've got my palette knife and my modeling paste, and I'm using stencils that came in an 8-pack from Amazon. I chose 4 different designs that are similar but not identical to just make some texture in the corner areas on the bottom and the top, not covering the whole board and not making sure that I actually get all of this where I'm putting it down. I kind of do it haphazardly so that it naturally begins and ends instead of being completely perfect. While those dry, I'm going to give my castings a base coat of DIY's Layered Chocolate. And I will use this same paint to give a base coat over all that texture on my boards. I use the Duraclear Ultra Matte Sealer to seal in those 2 boards and my castings. I'm using a color called Burlap to go over my castings for the first coat of a layering process to give these that kind of monochromatic look along with those boards. So I'm doing like a heavy dry brushing here. It's not completely dry brushing, it's a little bit thicker. The next color I go in with is Oyster Beige, and I do that a little bit lighter handed than the Burlap. And then I take that Country Chic Vanilla Frosting Chalk paint and do a light dry brush of that on top of the other colors. And then for a final highlight, I use just the regular white acrylic paint using a very light hand. I'm going to repeat these same colors onto my boards. I thought I was going to like this, but it's so identical that you can barely see what's going on there, that there's even a hummingbird. So back to some painting just on the boards to make a space for these castings to pop. I've watered down that Oyster Beige paint. I'm going to spread that around that center section where the casting is going to be, and then spreading it out with my finger and blending it into the area surrounding it. So what I'm going to do, now I'm using a baby wipe to just dab off some of the extra. I'm just going to keep working with this until I get what I want. So that's where it's like there's no hard and fast rules. You just have to play with it until you get what you want. So I decided to drag that color down over more of the board because I realized there was too much of the layered chocolate still showing through, and I did not like that. So now I'm going to add some splatters. Just watered down a little bit of the white acrylic paint and tapping onto the handle of my little fan brush. I add that, and then I add some black. I went ahead and finished up the back side and the edges of my boards with that cast iron paint. Now I'm using Titebond Quick and Thick to attach my castings. I have a couple of the Tim Holtz number strips that I just went around the edges with some vintage photo distress ink and then some of the Timber Brown from the Stays On ink. And I'm going to glue those down on the bottom right hand corner with my Fabri-Tac glue. As a final touch, I'm going to add some of the Spanish Copper Rub and Buff, very lightly, going around the high spots on my castings. And then I will add this around just that front edge of my board. I really love all the different textures on these, with the texture that I did underneath the paint and even the texture that you get with the paint and the splatters. For this one, I've got this really nice large wood slice. I'm going to go ahead and give it a coat of shellac just to help prevent, it'll seal it and help prevent any bleed through. Now I have this decoupage paper from Decoupage Queen. I'm going to lay that out onto the board and just kind of make little creases around the edges so I know where to start tearing my paper away so that it will fit onto this wood round. I'm using a paintbrush dipped in water and then just tearing around all those edges, and I will do this, put it back on, figure out where I need to tear away more, and just keep repeating that process until I have a pretty good fit. I'm using Fusion's Parchment to fill in the center of this wood round where the decoupage paper will go so that the design will really pop better than if it's just on the wood. And I'm leaving a margin from that edge so that I don't have the white paint showing out from beyond my piece of decoupage paper. So now using the Mod Podge, I'm just going to brush that onto one half and then smooth that out, take my brayer and make sure it's nice and smooth. And then I will repeat that on the other half. Once that's all glued down, I go around all those edges, pulling up anywhere that I didn't quite get enough glue, add that in and smooth it out. Then I go over the entire piece with another layer of the Mod Podge. Now I'm taking a little piece of sandpaper and I'm just kind of scuff sanding right around that edge so that I can add some antique wax and it will have something more to grab onto. It doesn't work as well if there's a lot of glue on there. So I'm just brushing that antique wax out just slightly over the edge of the decoupage paper onto the outer edge of the wood slice, and then I'm going to wipe that back with a cloth. I'm just going to work in small sections so that the antique wax does not dry before I have a chance to wipe it back. And I'm just going to work my way around this wood round, trying to fill in that lighter area that's between the paper and the edge of the wood round. To add some feet, I'm going to use these little wood ball knobs from Hobby Lobby. They're approximately 1.25 inches across. I started to apply my antiquing wax onto these, and that raw wood just soaks it right up, so I ended up watering that down so that I could spread it more easily onto these knobs. Once they're dry, I go ahead and buff them back with a soft cloth. Now I'm going to take some of my clear wax and apply this around the entire front of my wood slice, brushing it on and then wiping it back. I'm doing this because I am going to go in with some white wax and I want to be able to pull it back more easily. Now for the white wax, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to brush this on over the entire front. I like that this will give a slight haze to that dark antique wax. It kind of knocks it back a little bit. Doesn't really affect the decoupage paper much, but I just like the look that this gave it. It just kind of softens that darker look and makes it look a little more worn. Now it's time to glue on the feet. I'm using Titebond's Premium Wood Glue for this. trying to not get too much on there. I don't want it to spread out all from underneath the bottoms of those. I just want enough to get good adhesion. I'm going to apply all 4 of those little feet. And then once that's had some time to set up so I know they won't move, I'm going to put this board on there and then add some weight with some IOD molds, because we all know those are fairly heavy. I left it like this overnight. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comments. I hope these projects gave you some fresh inspiration, and I look forward to seeing you next time.